Hello and welcome back. So, last we left off, I glued in the neck. I used the bolts to attach it back to the body. Well, now it's been left to dry, and we're going to continue with the next step, which is we are going to pull these bolts out. We're going to replace them with wooden plugs. These are made out of ash, the ones that I have right here. That are the ones that I use for guitar building. If you ever need to plug anything up, try to find wooden plugs of a similar hardwood, or any hardwood really, because sometimes you're working with, for example, plywood, which is what I'm working with right here. This body is made out of a bunch of plywood. And if you are able to, you can cut your own plugs of the same wood and with similar grain patterns, and you can totally make holes disappear. But that's, mostly important if you have a clear finish. Anyway, now I'm going to show you how I drill out these holes to make them bigger so that those wooden plugs will fit, and why I use these metal washers. I said in the last video that I was going to show you why I used the metal washers and not just use the back plate like the guitar came. And yeah, let's get going. Okay, so let's start plugging this hole right here. First off, we just pull the screw out. And we can put this to the side. Next, I'm going to use this drill bit to drill out the hole and to drill out into the neck. I've put a piece of tape so that it only goes halfway into the neck, because I really don't want to drill into the fretboard and ruin things. And so I'm just going to drill this out real quick. Okay, so now I've drilled this hole out. I'm leaving the rest of them to keep everything aligned, clamped together, and in the perfect place. And because I didn't use the back plate, I didn't have to fiddle around. I just kept these in place, and now I'm going to plug this hole. I hope that makes sense. If it doesn't, please just ask questions in the comments below, and I'll talk to you guys. I have been thinking that maybe I should ask you guys a little bit more to subscribe. Not because I want to make you feel like you have to or anything like that, but because it would be a really good thing if I had enough subscribers that I could make posts, because then I could, I could say, hey, this weekend I'm starting to film a build, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the lacquer. Give me all the questions you would like for me to answer in that video, and I would be able to make videos where I actually answered your questions before I asked you to ask the questions in the video. I don't know if any of that made any sense, but yeah. So if you're watching this and you're not subscribed, it would help me out if you wanted to. Or if you could subscribe and help me make better videos. So now I'm just going to tap this in, and you listen for a hollow sound and then a stumpy sound. I hope I will be able to pick it up, because that's how you know that you've put it all the way down. And because I have these still drilled in, I don't have to be overly worried, I suppose is the word, that I might hit this so hard that the neck falls off or anything, because it's actually still held in place. And still be careful, don't put like all your force into these bangs. We're not trying to nail down a roof or anything, we're building a guitar. I don't know if that was the perfect way of showing you the sound, but there it is anyway. And now I can leave this to dry, and I can pull the next screw out, which is going to be this one. And now I can just drill this out just like I did with the last one. Okay, so now the neck has been plugged up, everything is hard and is exactly the way it's supposed to be. This neck is super solid to the body, and all I'm gonna do is leave the glue to dry, and then I'm gonna cut these down. I'm not leaving the glue to dry completely before I do that, because it's unnecessary. We're not yet in a state where we're gonna put any strain on this neck, so we don't have to be crazy about those things. But I'm gonna let it dry for a little bit. And so I'll be back in a couple of seconds. No, I will be back now. Okay, so now the neck has been jointed and we are gonna seal up edges around, and it's not because we don't have a good connection or anything like that. It's perfectly fine the way it is. But the thing is, if you look at similar guitars, I'm not gonna name a brand, I think you all know what I'm talking about or what I'm about to talk about. If you look at the seam here on some guitars, you will find cracks in the finish, and that's because this edge is too sharp, too hard of an angle for the lacquer. So we're gonna soften it up, and the way we're gonna do that is by just filling in those edges with some epoxy clay. You can buy this in arts and crafts stores, in automotive stores, different types. It doesn't really matter. The only thing that matters is that you read the instructions and that you follow them when you mix them, because you will have a and a B bucket and they won't really dry out unless you mix them together. So you have to keep them separate. So you take, in my case, equal parts, mix them together and smear them in to the corner. And I'll show you now what I mean. Okay, so here I have 2 balls of the epoxy clay, one from A and one from B. And all I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna squish them together and fold them in on each other and mix them up into one ball. And since one is a darker and the other one is a lighter, I'll just see very clearly if they have been mixed well, because I can see both colors. And you want them to be so well mixed together that you can't tell the colors apart. Okay, so now I can start using this. And if you look real closely here is, for example, a perfect place to put some epoxy. So I'm taking off a tiny bit of the epoxy I've made. I'm rolling it out into a long strip like this, and I'm pushing it in right here. And I'm breaking up that angle by filling that space there with epoxy clay. And we're just gonna go around the neck and do that. And we're just doing that so that form a nicer bond between the body and the neck. And this will basically just make sure that we don't get any of those weird cracks in the finish afterwards. I'm just gonna try to smooth it out as much as possible. And once this has hardened, we can go back with some sandpaper and we can make everything neat. Okay, so here is also a place where the edge is just too sharp and the lacquer will break easily. And so we're just gonna work some of that epoxy clay into these spaces as well. Make it look seamless, like the body and the neck have never been 2 different parts. As long as you keep being patient, it's gonna turn out great. And don't forget, we will go back and sand this afterwards, so even if it doesn't look perfect now, it will once it's dried. We also have this edge right here. It's not as prominent because it's right up against the neck, and most people are used to that being a sharp edge, but we do still want to create just a tiny bit of a relief curve. Okay, so there it is right now. That's the way it looks. And it's a nice, even edge. It will need to dry now, and then I can smooth it out even more and really create like just a tiny little bit of a curve so that the lacquer don't get in there and, you know, break apart. But that's going to be the end of this video. Thanks so much for watching. If you wouldn't mind subscribing, it would help out a lot, because I kind of want to see if I can get to that point. I don't really know how many subscribers you need, but you need enough so that you can start making posts, because then I can start making the videos more relatable to the people who are actually watching them and might actually need to learn something about guitars. If you're into learning anything about guitars, maybe watching these videos for some other reasons that I don't know. So I'll see you in the next video when we paint this guitar, I think. Unless there's something else that I've forgotten that I need to do first.